Seattle Storm owner cursed out a teenage girl over her pro Sophie Cunningham sign. The fan was forced to put it away and was left in tears. That's the post that's been ripping through basketball Twitter for the last 2 days, and it's not some exaggerated internet rumor either. Once you dig into what actually happened courtside in Seattle, the real story is worse than the headline makes it sound. And it says a lot more about this league right now than a single game score ever could.
Like something like that. And then she told us that we were effing insane.
And she's like, and she went like insane.
Yeah.
She's like, you better stop this.
And stop pulling this. Yeah.
And
for you guys
I
to
hope
come
God
here
can
and
save
pull
you.
this. Yeah.
She said, for you to come here and pull this shit.
Yeah.
She said the word?
Yeah.
Did she say effing insane or
No,
insane?
she said the word. Yeah.
Nobody around you spoke up for you.
No.
So, I will say honestly, when I came over, you were in tears.
Yeah, I've never been yelled at like that. I mean, I've had people hate on me on the internet, but like it doesn't really affect me as much because it's just people online. But that just took me by surprise because I thought she was gonna be nice, and then she starts like screaming at us.
A teenage girl brought a sign to a WNBA game. It didn't attack anybody. It didn't call out a single player by name. It just thanked Sophie Cunningham for speaking up for girls in sports. And according to the fans who were sitting right there, a Seattle Storm co-owner walked straight up to her mid-game and told her to put it away, right there in front of a sold-out crowd. By the time it was over, the girl was in tears and security was involved. Sit with that for a second. A grown adult, someone who literally owns a piece of a professional sports franchise, went after a kid at a basketball game because she liked a sign.
On that same vein, in that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children. And that's, little girls, who are also involved in that category. And so, I stand on what I said and, I'll always believe that.
Yeah, do you see your advocacy on that, like, taking any form going forward?
You know, I don't know. I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs. I have morals, and I'll always stand on those and be true to who I am. And, I think people are going to take it how they want to take it, but I've never even really said anything about that. And so, when it comes just to protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that. I think that's why you have Title IX. That's why, you have some of the greats in women's sports. If Title IX and women's sports were protected, then you wouldn't hear about any type of women in sport. And so, I think in the future, it's just really, important to protect.
Do you think, I guess, along the line like that, it goes against perhaps some people might say, hey, for the trans community, this could be something that could come back on us or be targeted against us. Like, how do you, I guess, view that sort of critique?
You know, like I said, I extend love and, I don't dislike anyone. Like, I think there is room for absolutely everyone here, and I think there's room to love everyone. And
Weeks ago, Sophie Cunningham sat down for an ESPN feature piece and got asked a direct question about protecting women's sports. She didn't dodge it, and she didn't try to soften it into something safer either. She said plainly that she wants to protect young girls in locker rooms, that they shouldn't have to compete against biological men, and that she'll always believe that, no matter what kind of reaction it stirs up.
How the left is completely intolerant and the actual hateful ones. This woman is not an owner of a basketball team. She's an owner of a left-wing, radical, political activist group that happens to play basketball. Because this team has endorsed Kamala Harris for president. They have promoted trans rights on their website and their merchandise. And clearly they hold a double standard and allow people to hold signs like this, but belittle young girls that support their sports remaining female. I don't expect them to do this, but I would really like to see the WNBA protect and stand up for fans just like these two young girls from hate and intolerance. And if you're
There was no name-calling in that answer. There was no attack on a teammate, a rival, or anyone specific. It was just a direct answer to a direct question, delivered calmly, the way you'd expect from someone who'd actually thought it through beforehand instead of blurting something out in the moment. Except that answer had a name attached to it whether Sophie said it out loud or not, because context in this league rarely stays neutral for long.
yeah, you know, I think it has been so fun. I played with BG for 6 years, and so I know her like the back of my hand. And as of late, she's been playing really good. She's been playing like OG Brittney. I'm there to love, but I'm also there to love biological women, and I think that there are rights that need to be protected. And like I said, I'm going to stand true to that. I'll never falter in my beliefs in that, but I have never once said I hated the trans community. Like I said, I think there's space for everyone.
Anyone who's followed a Fever game against the Connecticut Sun this season already knows exactly who a lot of fans connected those comments to. Brittney Griner and Caitlin Clark have had a rough history on the court going back 3 seasons now. Body checks that never got whistled, a bench moment last year fans still argue about frame by frame, and a pattern of officiating that kept breaking the same direction every single time these two shared the floor. So when Cunningham, Clark's closest teammate and most vocal protector on that roster, stood up and said men shouldn't be playing in women's sports, nobody in the fan base needed a translator to connect the dots. The timing alone did most of the talking for her.
Some fans at the game booed Cunningham when she checked into the game. One Seattle Storm player even showed up pre-game wearing a shirt that read, "Trans rights are human rights." After the game, Storm coach Sonia Rahman was asked about the situation.
Seattle and this organization and Climate Pledge, we always want to be an area where people feel welcome coming into this building. I think we've always done a really good job with that. So I know our organization was, working closely with Climate Pledge and with security to just make sure that, everybody feels safe and included and welcome when they walk in this door. And from what I understand, that was...
Griner has never directly addressed the theory that Cunningham's comments were aimed specifically at her. What she did say, in a separate interview just days before this whole thing exploded, was that playing against Cunningham is annoying as crap, even though she'd never want a different teammate standing next to her. Make of that what you want. But once Cunningham's comments actually hit the internet, the reaction wasn't small, and it definitely wasn't quiet for very long.
We do have Sophie Cunningham, a female athlete herself, very accomplished in her own right, coming forth and speaking that truth that men shouldn't play in women's sports. We want to protect women and girls, and the backlash she is receiving from Democrats and left-wing figures across the country is astonishing.
Within about 48 hours, it was everywhere. USA Today picked the story up. ESPN ran segments on it across multiple shows the next morning. Fox News gave it a full national segment of its own. Even the White House press secretary weighed in publicly, saying Cunningham was standing on the right side of an issue that most Americans already agree on, whether the league likes hearing that or not. That's not a small reaction to a WNBA role player answering one honest question during a feature interview. That's a full-blown national conversation spilling way outside the world of basketball, and Sophie never asked for any of it to happen the way it did.
I can't applaud her enough. This notion that you're hating on the trans community because you are not a proponent of them participating in female sports is utterly ridiculous. Sophie Cunningham said every word right on the money. There's no hate involved. There's only love we're talking about. But what happened to loving girls who are born biologically as girls? What about their rights? What about fairness associated to them? Leah Thomas, I'm going to keep bringing that name up. 400 plus in the world competing as a male. Transitions to female, and he was number 1. If we're going to act like transitioning from male to female doesn't involve an advantage for that trans athlete, I have nothing to say to you. You're not exercising common sense.
What she did next is really the part people should be paying more attention to, because it's the part that separates her from almost every other athlete who's ever found themselves in this exact spot. Reporters came back at her days later, clearly hoping she'd walk it back, clarify it, or soften it into something less specific and less risky. She didn't do any of that. She repeated it, almost word for word, and added that she doesn't hate anyone, that she genuinely believes there's room for everybody, but that she's not going to change what she actually thinks just because a room full of people wanted her to. That's not the behavior of someone chasing controversy for attention. That's someone who got asked a fair question, gave an honest answer, and refused to pretend she didn't mean it once the pressure actually showed up.
Comes out last week and talks about her beliefs, which I do think is very rare, especially being as young as she is, and quite honestly being brave to share something she knows is going to get picked apart a million times, and then standing by it. That's refreshing, especially from a young woman.
And that brings us to Seattle, because this is where the whole thing stopped being an online argument and turned into something that happened to an actual kid at an actual game, in front of actual people who watched it unfold in real time. Tuesday night, the Fever were in town to play the Storm, a matchup that on paper should have just been about basketball. Before tip-off, a small group gathered outside Climate Pledge Arena, some supporting Cunningham directly, others there to promote a Washington ballot measure about fairness in girls' athletics that's been picking up attention across the state. A few carried signs. A few wore shirts printed with the XX and XY symbols. None of it was aimed at any specific player on the Storm roster. It was about Cunningham, about the broader debate she'd stepped into weeks earlier, and about a policy conversation that's been building for a while now, well beyond just one WNBA player's comments.
She's covering your sign.
Two of those fans made it into the arena and sat courtside, holding a sign that simply thanked Cunningham for speaking up for girls. According to Brandy Cruz of Undivided Pod, who spoke with them directly afterward, a woman approached them mid-game and reportedly called them and their sign completely unhinged, then had security remove them from their seats. The fans later identified the woman as Celeste Keaton, a minority owner of the Storm. One of them said she was left in tears before the confrontation was even over, shaken by how quickly a night at a basketball game turned into something confrontational and personal.
There were signs that said, like, we love Sophie, like, thank you, Sophie, for speaking up. And so we were holding on, just watching the game. Again, like, we were being super great. We hadn't said anything to anyone else. We were being super respectful. We were just holding our signs and cheering for both teams. And this lady, older lady, comes up to us. And she comes up to us, and at first I think she's going to be nice. And she asks, like, what are you guys doing? Or something like that. And then it was like, Jesus loves everyone. That's what she told us. And I was like, oh, I know. Like, I'm religious. Like, I know. Like, I know.
Nice.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, I hope Jesus can forgive you for what sin you've done. And, like, something like that. And then she told us that we were effing insane.
And she's like, and she went like
yes.
insane.
Yeah.
She's like, you better stop this.
And stop pulling
shit.
this. Yeah.
And
Now think about the asymmetry sitting right in the middle of all of this. A crowd gathered outside that arena representing more than one point of view on this exact issue, and nobody from the organization approached the other side of that demonstration to tell them anything. That quote's completely her right, and nobody watching is arguing she shouldn't be allowed to wear whatever she wants walking into her own arena. But a teenage fan quietly holding a thank you sign for a player on the visiting team got confronted by a co-owner of the home franchise and told to put it away in front of thousands of people.
Yeah. Women are real. I had this crazy idea on Thursday that I wanted to support Sophie. We've gone all around California supporting female athletes, and I just said, we can go to Seattle and we can support female athletes. And Brandy was right there, ready to help us. And thank you all for showing up. We just have simple belief that women are adult human females, and women deserve their own female-only sports and spaces, especially prisons and domestic violence shelters. Yes. We are higher than age.
So ask yourself the obvious question here. If a sign that simply says, thank you for speaking up for girls is enough to get a fan yelled at by ownership, and a shirt making a political statement on the opposite side of that exact same debate gets nothing but a standing ovation from the crowd, what does that actually tell you about where this organization stands? It's not that the sign was rude, because it wasn't. It's not that it targeted anyone on the Storm roster by name, because it didn't do that either. The only thing that sign actually did was agree with Sophie Cunningham. Majority owner Ginny Gilder released a statement admitting a co-owner had made comments to two fans and apologizing for it, saying everyone who attends a Storm game deserves to feel welcome regardless of what they believe. Notice everything that statement carefully avoided doing. It didn't name Keaton directly. It didn't explain what was actually said to those fans in the moment. And it never addressed why a co-owner felt entitled to confront paying customers over a sign in the first place, or whether there'd be any real accountability beyond a carefully worded press release. It read exactly like the kind of statement built to make an uncomfortable story quietly disappear, not one built to genuinely answer for what happened on that concourse.
I apologize for the way I look. I literally just left CrossFit, don't have any recording material here, but breaking news, Storm co-owner Celeste Keaton was fined and suspended from attending the next 5 home games of the Seattle Storm, following the incident with Fever fans last night, in which she made a comment about one of their players' supporters. That came directly from the league. So that's the latest on this developing story. So there it is.
And that's really the heart of this whole situation once you strip away all the noise around it. Sophie Cunningham didn't do anything to earn any of this. She answered a question honestly, stood by it when the pressure came looking for her twice, and then had to watch a teenage fan get treated like a threat simply for agreeing with her out loud in public. Nobody should be yelled at by a team owner over a shirt or a sign at a basketball game, full stop, regardless of which side of this debate they land on. The fact that it only happened to the fans supporting Cunningham tells you almost everything you need to know about how one-sided the tolerance actually runs in certain rooms around this league.
We have Sophie Cunningham, who's willing to stand 10 toes down. And Sophie Cunningham was quoted as saying, I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sports who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Megan Rapinoe's such a fucking bird. Like, she's such a fucking bird. Biological men should not be playing in sports with biological men, period. End of discussion. It shouldn't be controversial. It shouldn't be a cause for debate. It shouldn't be labeled transphobia because you don't want to have to compete with people who were born biological men and have biological advantages that women will never have and never be able to have for the rest of their life. I always ask the question, why do we never see, like, biological women transitioning to be men and playing in men's sports? Why? Why don't we ever see that? Why is it always biological men transitioning to women and coming over to play with women?
This also didn't happen in a total vacuum, which is part of why it's spreading the way it has. It landed roughly 1 week after a different WNBA player got quietly benched with suspiciously reduced minutes right after her own comments about protecting women's sports started making headlines across the league. A vague statement here, a quiet rotation change there, never anything official, never anything that holds up to real scrutiny if you push on it. Just enough quiet pressure applied that everyone else watching around the league gets the message without a single word ever needing to be said out loud in a locker room.
Trans people live. Nobody has a problem with trans people and what they do on their own time. It's just in regards to what Sophie said is when it comes to sports. Women, biological women should play sports against biological women. Men should play against men because the simple reason for it is because scientifically, just men are stronger, faster, bigger than women.
So when people online start asking why the WNBA seems to have room for basically every opinion except the one Cunningham gave, this Seattle incident is exactly why that question keeps coming back up. It's not that her comments were extreme in any real sense. Wanting to protect girls' sports and wanting fair competition on the court isn't a fringe position by any honest measure. And the polling backs that up, showing most Americans actually agree with her on this specific issue. It's that saying it out loud, calmly, honestly, without ever attacking a single person by name, apparently makes you a target in certain rooms connected to this league. Whether that's a coaching staff quietly trimming your minutes on the court, or a co-owner walking up to a crying teenager and telling her to put her sign away in front of a packed arena. She's already shown twice, on camera, in front of reporters clearly hoping for a different answer, that she'll repeat herself word for word rather than hand anyone a softer, safer version of what she actually believes. The bigger question hanging over all of this now isn't really about Sophie anymore. It's about whether the league and its individual teams are going to keep treating her supporters differently than everyone else's, or whether Wednesday's carefully worded apology was just enough to make one uncomfortable headline quietly disappear before the next one inevitably shows up somewhere else.